From blueprints to booming businesses, from groundbreaking to grand openings, this is Beyond the Blueprint. Join host Brad Howard as he takes you behind the scenes of growth and development in Mooresville, Lake Norman, and beyond. We're talking with the decision makers, the planners, the visionaries shaping our communities, giving exclusive insight into what happens before, during, and after projects that define our region. The future is being built right now. Let's go beyond the blueprint.
Good Friday afternoon. This is Beyond the Blueprint on WSIC. I'm Brad Howard, and thank you to those listening on the radio, tuning in on 105.9 FM, 100.7 FM, 1400 AM. It's 3 o'clock here on a Friday, and I'm glad you're with me. I'd like to start today not with a headline, but with a place. If you stand at exit 31, just off Interstate 77 at Langtree Road, where the lake opens up and Lowe's World Headquarters sits on the ridge, you're standing in the middle of the fastest growing county in the Charlotte region. Billions of dollars, a brand new 4-lane road being carved out of the red clay as we speak. Now, my family's been on this ground for a long time. In fact, back to the early 1700s, generations before there was ever a lake here at all. So I'm not reading this region off of a map. But here's the thing. This show is not about me. It's not about my family. Today and where we will start heading from this point is about something much larger. It's about the towns. It's about the towns here on and around Lake Norman. Mooresville, Davidson, Cornelius, Huntersville, Statesville, and Troutman. Each one has its own history. Each one its own character, and each one its own soul. Each town has its own Christmas parade, lights its own tree, and tells its own story every single year. And every one of these towns is right now standing at the most consequential moment in its history. So let me tell you exactly why this show exists. Beyond the Blueprint is here to help you understand how things actually happen in our region, how a road gets built, how a subdivision comes out of the ground, how zoning works, how water and sewer gets put in, how a piece of raw land becomes a place that people live and people thrive. All the pieces of development that most folks never see, and I've spent the majority of my life in the middle of. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Roads do not build themselves, and none of this happens overnight. A subdivision you drive past and take for granted could take a decade to become reality. A single road can take decades, from the first line on a map to the day that you drive on it. Water and sewer infrastructure, the pipes underneath everything, can take years, sometimes decades, to plan and pay for and put on the ground. Everything here takes time. Far more time than people realize. And that's the whole reason I wanted to do the show, because we have to recalibrate the way that we think. We can't keep making our biggest decisions worried just about tomorrow or about this year. When we decide where a road goes, or what we zone a parcel of land, or what we build and where we build it, we have to think 5 years out, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, even 100 years down the road. That's the time scale that actually plays out. Because almost every real problem we have traces back to the same thing. Someone made a major decision without considering the future, without thinking about the people who would have to live with it. And here's the part I believe in wholeheartedly. Until we look back on our history and truly appreciate it and respect it, we will never really understand the present that we're living in or the moment that we're standing in right now. And if we can do that, if we can honor the past and the history where we came from, then we can actually thrive in the present, and we can build on the foundation that our forefathers laid, lay good ground ourselves, so that our children and their children's children will inherit a proper foundation in their government, in their society, and in everything, so that it comes back to two things. We have to think about other people when we make our decisions, and we have to think about the future. We can't afford to be greedy and make calls based on what's good for today, what's good in the moment, and what's good just for the moment any longer. That's what this show is about. That's what Blueprint is trying to read. That's what we are here for. So what I want to do is start where we are, and I want to take this one town at a time and explain the story. So let's start in Mooresville, because Mooresville is the town that I know best. Mooresville's story starts with a railroad. Back in the 1850s, the Atlantic, Tennessee, and Ohio Railroad was pushing its track up from Charlotte toward Statesville. A local farmer and brickmaker named John Franklin Moore donated a parcel of his own land for a depot and a cotton siding. People started calling this spot Moore's Siding. And on March 3rd, 1873, that little settlement was officially incorporated as the town of Mooresville, named after the man who gave the land. And here's the detail I love. Huntersville, just down the road, incorporated that very same week, February 28th, 1873, just a few days before Mooresville. Two towns born in the same week, off the same rail line, out of the same economy. That's how tied together this region has always been. And the railroad, Mooresville became a cotton and textile town. The first mill opened in 1893. During World War II, Mooresville mills were making military linens and parachute fabric. That was the identity for the better part of a century, a mill town. And then the mills closed. The last large mill shut in 1999, and a lot of the town's experience, and throughout in the Carolinas, this is a common thread. When the mill leaves, the towns fade. However, Mooresville did not. Mooresville transitioned to Race City, USA. And if you don't know Mooresville, that's the name to know, Race City, USA, because this town became home to a huge share of the NASCAR world, of race teams and drivers and shops and engine builders, the technical institute that trains the mechanics. Drive around Mooresville today, and you'll pass a garage after garage full of people who build the fastest cars on earth. A cotton town that spun itself into a racing town. That's the kind of place this is. It doesn't quit. It reinvents. It's not about the racetracks. It's downtown. It's Main Street. It's the heart of Mooresville, the same Main Street that grew up around the 1850s railroad depot, and that depot still stands in the middle of town, like it always has been. But the history right here goes back a lot further than the railroad. And I want to tell you something. A lot of people who live right by Langtree have no idea of the history. We'll continue down that road because a piece of the American Revolution happened right there. So going back to February 1st, 1781, the very same morning, just down the river, British under Lord Cornwallis fought their way across the Catawba at the Battle of Cowan's Ford. The fight where General William Lee Davidson, the man Davidson College is named for, was killed. And after that crossing, Cornwallis sent his cavalry commander, Bannister Tarleton, riding hard to chase down the fleeing Patriot militia. Where did they catch them? A little country tavern called Torrance's Tavern. And that spot is just by the crossroads at Langtree and Highway 115. There's a state historical marker that stands there today, right across from the fire station. It was a short, brutal fight in the cold rain. The militia gathered there with a crowd of refugee families, and Tarleton charged them with the cry, "Remember the Cowpens." 10 patriots were killed, the tavern was burned to the ground, and the British moved on. It's a small footnote in the history books, but it happened right here, right on the ground we stand, 244 years ago, long before there was a Mooresville, long before there was a lake or a Langtree. That's how deep the roots run in this place we all call home. And nothing tells you who a town really is like its traditions. So let me tell you about Mooresville. Mooresville has the most amazing Christmas parade. The parade has been running since 1944. So think about that. Through the end of a world war, through every up and down this town has ever had, every single year, The Mooresville Christmas Parade comes right down Main Street on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, and in 2025, they held the 81st one. 81 years, and that's not a small thing. You get thousands of people lining the route, folks staking out the curbsides the night before. First responders, floats, marching bands, dance groups, the Grinch and Santa, and leading the whole thing off for decades is the town's 1921 Americana La France fire engine, a fire truck that has actually appeared in movies. The old truck begins to roll down Main Street, and the whole town knows that Christmas has started, and that's just the beginning. Mooresville also does a classic Christmas downtown, an evening where they bring ice skating, horse-drawn wagons, a carousel, train rides, carolers, the whole thing right here, right on Main Street in the middle of December. And in March, they throw shamrocks and shenanigans for St. Patrick's Day, the fire and rescue, pipe drums. All summer long, they have a festival of food trucks, arts, and acoustics, and the Fine Arts Festival run by the town's own Arts Council out of the historic depot we mentioned earlier. A Mooresville institution that's been going on the better part of 20 years. And of course, being Race City, USA, there's classic car cruisins all over the place. And this is what I mean by the soul of a small town. It's not about the population number. It's whether the people still show up on Main Street together year after year for the same traditions their parents showed up for the same traditions their grandparents showed up for. And here's where it gets real, because all of that community and all of that character is under pressure. Mooresville is growing so fast, the pipes can't keep up. So the town passed a 35-month building moratorium near the South Iredell pump station because it's run short on sewer capacity. And the town went from approving thousands of apartments to approving essentially none, rewriting its own rules to demand real roads and real commercial commitments first. So that's Mooresville, a railroad town that became a mill town, that became a racing town, and is now fighting to grow without losing the Main Street that made it what it is. So hold on to that, because you're going to hear a version of that same fight in every town along the corridor. And notice the time scale. The railroad took years to lay. The mills ran for a century. That parade has stood 81 years and counting. Nothing in Mooresville happened fast, and nothing happens anywhere fast. The people who built this town were planning for their grandchildren that they would never meet, and the future generations. That's the kind of thinking that we have to come back to. This is Brad Howard. You're listening to Beyond the Blueprint. We'll be right back. And when we are, we're going to head south to Davidson, and then we're going to have a conversation of what's under the lake. This is Brad Howard. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's Beyond the Blueprint. I'm Brad Howard. We're continuing our journey of the past, of what makes this region what it is. So let's head south to Davidson. And in Davidson could not be more different from Mooresville, but that's the point. Where Mooresville is a railroad and racing town, Davidson is a college town, and it exists because of the college. The Concord Presbytery decided to build a school, and they bought 469 acres of farmland from a man named William Lee Davidson, the second son of General William Lee Davidson, the same Revolutionary War hero we just spoke about, the one killed at Cowan's Ford. They named the college after the general. Classes started around 1837 with about 65 students, and the town grew up right around the campus and took the same name, incorporated 1879, shortened to just Davidson in 1891. And that college DNA is the whole personality of the town. Tree-shaded, walkable, very scholarly. A historic Main Street you can still stroll end to end. Davidson made a deliberate choice decades ago to grow slowly and with purpose. to protect the small town walkable character instead of chasing every single rooftop it could cram in. And whether you love that or if you disagree and argue with it, Davidson has held its shape better than almost anywhere in the region. And nothing shows you Davidson's heart like Christmas in Davidson. Now, here's a story I love. Christmas in Davidson began back in 1988 and started with one person, a woman named Irene Blackwell, who ran the village store on Main Street with her husband, had a simple idea. What if downtown shops just stayed open a little later, a few nights in December, so folks could stroll around and shop and enjoy the season together? That was it. That was the whole idea. And look what it became. Today's Christmas in Davidson draws more than 30,000 people, with over 1,000 volunteers making it happen. It's the first weekend of December, horse-drawn carriages, live music, the shops all lit up, local businesses sponsoring Christmas trees that nonprofits decorate, historic home tours, a giant Norway spruce lit up in the town green. Davidson College itself lists it as one of the college on official traditions. And anytime the students can enjoy it before they head home, they do. One woman's idea to keep the lights on just a little longer became a tradition that 30,000 people build their Christmas holiday in December around. And there's a quieter tradition that we were going to mention because it captures the region completely. Luminaria. It started in one of Davidson neighborhoods back in around 1998. Just the neighbors lining their sidewalks with little candles and lanterns. And then it spread, and it spread. And now every December, nearly 50 neighborhoods across Davidson, Cornelius, Mooresville, and Huntersville light up, all coordinated together. No one paid to do it. The people just do it because their neighbors do it, because it's beautiful, and because it's our home. That's the community you cannot buy and you cannot manufacture. And it didn't just spring up overnight. One shop owner's small idea in 1988, one neighbor's candles in 1998, growing a little every year for decades into something that 30,000 people now treasure as a tradition. And that's the lesson. The best things we built take time and patience and someone willing to think beyond the moment. Davidson also has concerts on the green all summer, a farmer's market that's been running strong since 2008. It's a town that shows up for itself and its citizens, and it is just amazing. So now, I promised you we'd talk about where all of this came from, and to do that, I have to take you under the water, under Lake Norman, because there's one thing every single town I've mentioned today has in common. They all sit on the lake. They sit on a lake that did not exist when the grandparents were young. So we're going to slow down because this is the most important part people have forgotten. Lake Norman is not a natural body of water. It is a man-made lake. Lake Norman did not exist until 1963. Duke Power broke ground on Cowan's Ford Dam in 1959, and it took years to fill behind it. So the thing that we treat as eternal, the thing that our identity in this region is now built on, is younger than a lot of people that may be listening to my voice right now. Before the water came, there was a world below. It was not empty land under the lake. There are mill villages, there are churches, there are stores and roads and family cemeteries spread across all 4 counties, Mecklenburg, Iredell, Lincoln, and Catawba. And let me name some of what's down there because it deserves to be named. There's 2 entire cotton mill towns, Long Island and East Mambo, each one home to about 120 working families with their own homes and stores and even a post office. The Long Island Mill was one of the oldest cotton mills in the entire South, and it closed in 1959 to make way for the lake. Both of these villages are on the bottom of the lake today. And it's not just the mills, there are old plantations and homesteads down there as well. Elmwood, a 200-year-old estate, Cedar Grove, the McConnell Place, There was a summer camp called Camp Fellowship. There was John Oliphant's grist mill. There are 27 miles of roads that lie under the water, including a stretch of the U.S. Highway 21 original roadbed that used to run between Charlotte and Statesville, still paved and under the water, and about 5 miles of the old Beatty's Ford Road, named for John Beatty, one of the first men to ever cross the Catawba right here. So the next time you're out on a boat or fishing or swimming in the lake, understand that you're floating on top of a lost world of homes and mills and churches, a summer camp, highways. Most people out there have no idea. And I want to put the roads on a timeline for you because it tells you everything about how this place came to be. So let's start with the oldest route out here, which was Highway 115 running north to south. That road has run the same path since 1861, when they laid the railroad through the cotton and cornfields, following an old wagon trail. And for generations, Highway 115 was the road, the farm-to-market road that farmers used to overhaul their cotton and corn down to Charlotte. One 2-lane road, that was it. Then came US 21. 21 was the paved through highway that carried Charlotte to Statesville traffic and took the load off of Highway 115. That's the same US 21 I just told you about that's sitting under the lake right now. The old stretch of it drowned in 1963, and that's when everything changed. So that was when Duke Power finished Cowan's Ford Dam and the river began backing up. And by 1964, the lake had reached full pond, an inland sea right on top of the farms. And right on the hills of the water came the interstate. They built I-77 straight up the corridor through the 60s. The Iredell County stretch opened in 1966, the Davidson Cornelius section about 1968, and they finished the run from Cornelius to Charlotte in 1975, and the whole route by 1977. And here's the part most people don't realize. I-77 did not come out of nowhere. It runs the exact same Charlotte to Statesville corridor as the old roads and literally absorbed US 21 into the new interstate. So think about that. In 100 years, the same ground went from a wagon trail to a farm road to a paved highway to an interstate running alongside an inland sea. The land was never moved. What we built on top of it is what changed. And watch what each new layer did to the people living in the region. When the lake filled in the 1960s, this was still farm country. Then the interstate opened the floodgates, and back in the 70s, more than half of all the growth in Iredell and Lincoln counties happened right on or near the corner of this lake. And since 1990, the Lake Norman area has grown more than 800%. So just since 1990, this area has an 8-fold growth in population. Today, the region adds around 157 new people a day on average. The same corridor the wagons rolled down in 1861, now the single most powerful growth engine in the state. And it didn't just happen. It did not happen overnight. Duke started quietly acquiring the land around 1910, then leasing it back to the families that were farming it. So by the time you got into the 1950s, the company almost held around 32,000 acres, and a lot of the folks had no idea what was coming. And then those families were handed an impossible choice. Sell your land, trade it for a lot that might someday be waterfront, or pay out of your own pocket to physically move your own house to higher ground. And most families simply could not afford to move the home. So they took the check. And they stood on the bank and they watched their homes go underwater. Many of those buildings were just left standing, and the water came up and took them. So think about that. You don't really get to bury your home place. You stand there and you watch it drown. And here's a detail worth getting right, because people get it wrong all the time. Cornelius, the town, was not named for a family that got flooded. Cornelius was named for Joseph Cornelius, the man who put up the money for the town's first cotton mill. And it was incorporated back in 1905, nearly 60 years before the lake ever existed. A name on a map that's older than the water by more than half a century. And that right there is the whole show. The buildings wash away, but the towns, the names, their traditions, they continue to endure if somebody bothers to keep them. Duke made the decision back then that every one of us lives with today. And now, for the first time, it's our turn to make the decisions. So let me show you the towns still deciding. And we'll be right back. This is Brad Howard, and you're listening to Beyond the Blueprint. And when we get back, we'll go down to the water itself, to Cornelius and Huntersville. And we're back. Welcome back to Beyond the Blueprint. I'm Brad Howard. Let's go down to the water. Let's go down to Cornelius and Huntersville and the actual lake itself. The two towns the lake really made, Huntersville and Cornelius. Cornelius has one of my favorite origin stories in the whole region because it starts with an argument. Back in the 1880s, two cotton firms up in Davidson got into a dispute over whether to appoint an official cotton weigher. And one man named R.J. Stowe, who was against it, just picked up his cotton weighing operation and moved it south of the Davidson town line. So much of the cotton started moving through that spot, and the people nicknamed it Liverpool, after a great English cotton port. Stowe wanted to build a mill, but he didn't have the money. So he went to a wealthy local businessman named Joseph Cornelius, who put up the capital. And when the town was finally incorporated in 1905, they named it Cornelius. To honor the man who backed the mill, the old Liverpool nickname just faded away. For most of its life, Cornelius was a mill and farm village. And then the lake came in the 1960s and changed everything. Suddenly, this little cotton town had about 70 miles of shoreline. It became a lakefront town. But here's what I find genuinely remarkable about Cornelius today. It has now reinvented itself into an arts town. And they did it on purpose. In 2013, the people of Cornelius voted for a bond package that set aside money to build a downtown arts and cultural district. A local couple, Erica and Bill Kane, put up $5 million gift. And in January 2023, the Kane Center for the Arts opened in Old Town Cornelius, a 35,000 square foot center with 400 seat theater, a gallery, dance studio, classrooms, an outdoor plaza. And the part that gives me the chills is they built it using salvaged wood from the old cotton gin building that used to stand on the site. The mill town literally built its arts future out of the bones of its cotton past. And the community shows up. Cornelius throws the Taba Walk Arts and Music Festival twice a year. Over 100 local artists, live music, food trucks, right through Old Town. There's Laketoberfest in the fall and Light Up Cornelius every November. The 2025 was their 14th annual. A cotton town became a lake town, became an arts town. That's the pattern out there. These towns transform. Now, right next door in Huntersville, remember, born the same week as Mooresville back in 1873. Before it was Huntersville, it was called Craighead. And it got renamed when a cotton farmer named Hunter donated the land for the railroad depot. Same story as everywhere else. Railroad, cotton, 1 square mile around a depot. But Huntersville today is known for two very different things. The first is Birkdale Village. So back in 1999, an old horse farm developers broke ground on is the Birkdale that sits there today. It was one of the first large, walkable, mixed-use live-work-play developments in North Carolina. Shops on the ground, homes above, a town green in the middle. Birkdale opened in 2003 and honestly became a blueprint that developers all over the country copied. The second thing is Latta, the historic Latta Place, the old plantation house built around 1800 near Mountain Island Lake that operated for years as a living history museum. It's been closed since 2021, and Mecklenburg County has been reworking the site with a reopening plan later this year. It's a reminder that the history out here is complicated, and all of it deserves to be told honestly, the good and the hard. Huntersville also has real community traditions. Hello Huntersville is the town's music and arts festival every May, outdoor concert series all summer at Veterans Park, and holiday events throughout December. Huntersville is flat out one of the fastest growing towns in the entire region, which brings me to the number that explains everything happening that you see visually. Right now, on average, 157 people move into the Charlotte metropolitan region every single day. Not every month, every day. That's a net gain of around 57,000 new residents every single year, and it's climbing fast. It was 83 a day back in 2001. It averaged 113 a day in 2022, 117 a day in 2023, and 157 a day now. Only about 60 of those 157 land in Mecklenburg County itself. The balance spill into the suburbs, and a whole lot of them are coming right here to the lake towns. So when Cornelius fights to keep its small town arts district, when Huntersville wrestles with what's left of its farmland, and when the traffic on 77 backs up for miles, it's not bad luck. It's 157 new folks a day moving into our community, all wanting a piece of what the town spent a century and a half building. But here's the hard part. The roads, the pipes, the schools, everything that we need to handle this growth takes years and decades to plan and to build. And that's the gap between how fast people arrive and how slow infrastructure comes. When we make decisions for the moment instead of for the future, we're living inside of the choices that were made 20, 30 plus years ago, or never at all. And you're listening to Beyond the Blueprint, and I'm Brad Howard. We'll be right back. And when we come back, we're going to head north to the farmland, and we're going to bring the whole picture of this conversation home. I'm Brad Howard. We'll be right back. And we're back. It's Beyond the Blueprint. I'm Brad Howard, and we're going to head north now. So let me take you away from the lake for a minute as we start heading north, because there's an entire 2/3 to this county that most folks that live at the lake never see. And it might be the most important part of the entire story. And that's why I believe that it's so important for people to hear. Most people may come home and they drive south. I highly encourage you, when you come home to the lake, to drive north and enjoy the beauty that's up there. So as you head to Statesville and Troutman and out into North Iredell, you're standing on one of the great agricultural regions of the entire state of North Carolina. This is farm country. This is real farm country. Iredell is the number one dairy county in the state, in the high rankings in cattle and dairy and corn silage, and it's led the state in dairy as long as anybody's kept the records. And if you want to understand the soul of this end of the county, go to Harmony. It's a little town up at the crossroads of Highway 21 and 901, maybe a population of around 600 people. But Harmony tells you everything about how the region began. The town gets its name from the Harmony Hill Camp Meeting, a religious revival that started back in 1846, where whole families would load up covered wagons, pitch tents, cook over open flames, and stay for 2 solid weeks. It was church, but it was also the biggest social gathering of the year. A lot of folks around here will tell you that their great-great-grandparents met their husband or wife at that camp meeting. And here's the thing that gets me. That meeting is still held every October, nearly 180 years later. The town itself wasn't even incorporated until 1927. The gathering came first. And Harmony has always been farm country to its bones. Back in 1908, the community came together and built the Harmony Farm School to teach the next generation how to work the land. That school's gone now, but drive around Harmony today, and most of that ground is still being farmed by families who've been on it for generations. And then, just up the road from Harmony, tucked into the foothills of the Brushy Mountains, there's a place I promise you will not believe until you see it. Love Valley. And Love Valley might be the single best story in this entire county. And here's how it happened. Back in 1954, a man named Andy Barker, successful contractor in Charlotte, 29 years old, walked away from his business to chase a dream he had since he was a kid. He wanted to build an Old West cowboy town, not a movie set, an actual town, a real working town. So he bought the land in the Brushy Mountains, moved his wife and 2 kids into a one-room home with no power and no plumbing, and he started building. And the very first thing that he built was his own home. It was the church, because his dream was 2 things at once: a cowboy town and a Christian community. The town was incorporated in 1863, and the part that makes it real to this day, cars are not allowed on Main Street in Love Valley, only horses. You ride in on a dirt road, you hitch your horse to the rail, you walk the wooden boardwalk just past the saloon and the general store, and it looks like it came just off the set of a John Wayne picture. And people live there. And on a big weekend, you'll have thousands of folks in that little town. And one more thing, because it's too good to leave out. Back in July of 1970, Andy Barker threw his daughter a birthday party and booked a then unknown band called the Allman Brothers. Word got out, and it turned into a 3-day rock festival that folks still call the Woodstock of the South. They expected maybe 20, 25,000 people, but somewhere around 100,000 people showed up. In a town of 100, that was a big deal. Some of them, honest to goodness, never left. But why I tell you the story on a show about development is because Love Valley was one man's long-view dream. He built it by hand. He meant it to outlast him, and it has. Andy Barker passed away back in 2011, and his town is still standing. It's still horses only, and still exactly what he pictured. That's the north end of Iredell County, Harmony and Love Valley. Farm families who never left, on a cowboy town, and a man that willed into existence out of nothing but a boyhood promise. That's what's up here. And that's the history that runs deep. And Statesville goes all the way back to 1753, when Scots-Irish and German settlers put down roots at a place called Fourth Creek Congregation. A couple years later, Governor Arthur Dobbs built Fort Dobbs, just north of there, to defend the frontier during the French and Indian War. It's the only French and Indian War historic site in the entire state. Iredell County itself was carved out around 1788, and Statesville became the county seat the very next year. And Statesville has one of the most beautiful traditions in the entire South, and most people at the lake have never been before: the Carolina Balloon Fest. Statesville is actually a hot air balloon town for those that don't realize it. It goes all the way back to 1969, when a balloon manufacturer set up shop there because the Piedmont weather and the skilled local craftsmen were a perfect fit. That led to the first balloon festival in 1974, and today the Carolina Balloon Fest is the second oldest hot air balloon festival in the entire country. Every 3rd week in October, the sky over Statesville fills up with these enormous glowing balloons, and at dawn and at dusk, if you've never seen it, I highly encourage you to put it on your list. And then there's Troutman, which might be the most fitting town to end on. Troutman started with an 11-year-old boy in 1778. A German immigrant named Jacob Troutman came to the area with his mother, and they bought 200 acres. That family grew, the crossroads took their name, the railroad came through, and the town was incorporated in 1905. But the part I love to this day, the descendants of that family still hold an annual reunion near the original 1778 land at a schoolhouse the family built in 1906, right next to the family cemetery. Nearly 250 years, same family, same ground, still coming home. That's what the whole region is made of. Families in towns that come home to the same ground, generation after generation. And that's exactly what's at stake right now, because here the growth is coming too. Troutman had to pass a 30-month building moratorium after it hit full sewer capacity. With thousands of already approved homes still in the pipeline, the pressure that's remaking the lake towns is now pushing north into the farmland. So let me set the compass for this entire series, because every episode is going to end looking forward. And I think about it in a few simple ways. Where are we heading as a county? There's a property revaluation landing January 1st, 2027, and it's going to hit every homeowner's tax bill. There's a courthouse expansion being designed, and underneath it all, the oldest question in local government: does this growth actually pay for itself, or does it cost us more than it brings in? Where are we heading in all of the towns? Whether Mooresville projects on Main Street, whether Davidson holds its shape, whether Cornelius keeps its soul, whether the farmland up in the north becomes a subdivision or continues as a farm, and where we are heading as people. That's the one that matters most. It's the question under every single thing we've discussed this afternoon. Are we going to grow into a region that our children and our grandchildren and their families can still afford and recognize? So let me bring it home. Every town we discussed today, Mooresville, Davidson, Cornelius, Huntersville, Statesville, Troutman, every single one of them were built by the local people who came to a piece of ground and decided to stay and decided to build something to hand down, whether it be a railroad depot, a cotton mill, a college. Maybe it was a Christmas parade that has been running for 81 years, a luminaria on a sidewalk, a balloon in an October sky, a family reunion at a 250-year-old home place, because here's what the show is really about. And I want to be clear from day one as we move forward in this new series. It's not about the buildings. It's not about the roads or the rooftops. Those are just the doorways. This show is about the people. It's about the towns they've built. It's about the traditions they've kept alive. It's about the history and the heritage that has laid the foundation for all of it. And it's about the newcomers, the 157 people a day who are excited to call this place home. They get to help write the next chapter now. And remember why we're here. And I told you at the top, the show exists to help you understand how things actually happen, how a road gets built, how a subdivision comes out of the ground, how zoning and water and sewer really work. And every town I walked you through today is proof of the same lesson. None of it happened overnight, and nothing happened by accident. A depot, a mill, a college, an 81-year-old parade, a family that's come home to the same ground for 250 years. Every bit of it was somebody somewhere making a decision they knew they wouldn't see the impact right away, and they may not live to see it pay off. So if you take one thing from today, take this. We have to stop making decisions for the moment and just for tomorrow. We have to make them thinking 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, and 100 years into the future. We have to look back. We have to honor where we came from before we can get to the present and get it right. And we have to think about other people. We have to think about our kids. We have to think about their kids. We have to think about neighbors we've never met and will probably never meet, instead of just what's good for us in this moment. That's the whole blueprint. That's the only way this region continues growing without losing its character and the soul that is built for generations. And the story that deserves to be told over time, I'm going to bring to the people who've lived it. I'm going to bring the people who are still living today. They're going to come to the microphone. And here's where we are. Every week, we'll start from a new point and backtrack from where we came from, where we're heading as a county and as towns and as a region and as neighbors, because you can't read the blueprint on where we're going until you understand the history of the ground that we are standing on today. The towns, the traditions, the characters of this place. And next week, we'll start pulling together how development actually works, how a road like the East-West Connector goes from a dream on a map to concrete under your tires, and just like Highway 150 as well, and why it takes decades. We're going to follow one project from raw dirt all the way through so you can see every hand it passes through and every year it takes to move it forward and keep advancing and progressing. Because once you see how the sausage actually gets made, you'll never look at another subdivision the same way again, or an empty field. The stories that deserve to be told, we're going to pull the people out and tell those stories. And that's where we're going to leave it this afternoon. You've been listening to Beyond the Blueprint on WSIC on 105.9 FM, 100.7 FM, 1400 AM. I am Brad Howard, and thank you for spending part of your Friday afternoon with us. We'll see you again next week, same time, 3 o'clock. And until next week, have a great week.